Unfortunately, I don't have a flower bouquet under someone's table to start the catch, but since it's a satellite, it's about a signal. But I'm going to ask someone to just tell me, and someone ancient like myself, to tell me if they can recall how they connected to the internet for the very first time. Possibly someone who did that a couple of decades ago. I don't know, anyone? I don't know, Pramod? Seth, absolutely. So I'm going to date myself. I'm about the same ilk as Pramod. So it was this telephone dial-up, right? It made this funny sound, things like that. And then you knew you were on the internet and you accessed the web. Now imagine yourself, if you can, as a 10-year-old who's living on a remote island somewhere in Indonesia. And the first time you connect through a browser, web browser, is not because of a telephone dial-up, but because of a satellite signal. And now imagine that that satellite signal was essentially a project that we led and financed at AIIB. So I have the privilege and honor of taking you from the Kunming airport to space. My name is Asim Rana, and I was the PTL for this transaction, and it was done long time ago in AIIB era for 2019. So here we are. Jackie, could we go to the next one? Okay, so just a little bit of a backdrop, similar to what was presented on the airport deal. Indonesia is an archipelago, and it is a host to 17,000 islands. Most of them, approximately 12,000 at that point in time, lacked access to basic connectivity, right? Nothing, no data, no internet, and many other forms of services were not there. It was estimated when we looked at this project that there were 94 million Indonesians who had access to no internet and to no data. Now, grasp the enormity of that. 94 million people, I think, I was speaking to Elif earlier today, I think that's the size of Turkey, right? So the Indonesian government took an amazing step forward and decided to bring 40 million of these people through the digital divide into the world of internet as we know it. And for that, in 2018, they launched a private-public partnership satellite transaction in order to bring these people into the world of internet. The PPP structure essentially meant that the government was going to pay for the service on behalf of all these users. That essentially made the transaction viable and bankable, right? People could come in, investors could come in and support the satellite because it was a difficult project. The shareholders obviously came in and supported the capital structure with about 25%. The satellite was going to be manufactured in France, so BPI, which was the export credit agency, wanted to support the purchase of this satellite and therefore provided a guarantee for other commercial lenders to come in, and that spoke for about $300 million of the project. But there was another massive element of the project that required commercial financing. This pertained to the launch, which was going to happen from Cape Canaveral by SpaceX, Mr. Elon Musk's company. It required ground systems and stations and controls that were going to be supported by Kratos and Hughes, and antennas by Chinese company called Nui, and insurance cost, which is a massive component of the project, that essentially were unspoken for. That was the financing gap. That was approximately $170 million. And this is when we stepped in. It was a developmental impact that was just enormous in sort of conceptualization. 40 million people, to give them data, and of course, as a multilateral bank, it was very important for us. So we stepped in. The consortium led by PSN were credible people. They had been operating satellites in the past. They gave us great comfort in their ability to execute this transaction. We had world-class suppliers from all over the world, as I've just mentioned, who were going to put the deal together. So we came in and we essentially stitched it together. We led. We did the difficult piece of the project in terms of sourcing commercial financing for 15 years and essentially mobilized another 20 to make the financing gap come together. So the financing part was done. There was then then we went into the legal due diligence aspect. Now, this was extremely interesting. There were many components to it. Legal, commercial, technical, and when I say that, I say it with a lot of experience behind that. It took us 18 months to do something like that at a minimum. And then, of course, halfway through it or 6 months into it, COVID hit. So that really compounded the situation. And just to give you an example of something which was very difficult to grasp, there was the insurance component, right? The riskiest part of this project is at launch, because that is the time when the most damage can be done. And so the insurance is a very important element, not only to make sure that you're covered for the launch, but also for the satellite to be in orbit for a year. However, the insurance price changes depending on during construction period if there is some sort of a launch failure. So if some satellite blows up, not necessarily at SpaceX, but some other launch provider, then all of a sudden the insurance cost goes up. But you also can't place the insurance at the beginning of the construction period, because then you'll be paying for insurance over 3 years, and again, that'll ask for more money, and that was very difficult. The other part is there's in-orbit insurance. So, I mean, this is stuff we learned whilst we got into the transaction, but you could be in orbit, and you have in-orbit insurance, but perhaps an asteroid hit the satellite, and although you were not able to deliver the 150 Gbps that we needed to deliver, you could only deliver 100 Gbps. So then what happens? Does the government pay you for that, or does it not pay you for that? It's partial insurance. If it's completely destroyed, the insurance will pay you out. But if it's not, you didn't know how much you were going to collect. So all of those aspects of diligence were very, very important. The government was extremely cooperative. They had a concession agreement with us, which laid out all these terms. And since it had been bidded through a proper public procurement process, they couldn't essentially revise it. So we had to really tweak the agreements and make sure that the risk allocation was appropriate and everyone was comfortable in what they were doing. So this 18 months felt like a lifetime at that time. Mengling, who's sitting here, was party to it, was number crunching, looking at all these different scenarios and telling me, boss, this thing, if it degrades by 50%, we're going to lose this much money. If it stays fine for 75%, it's going to be okay. But we had to really run all these scenarios and make sure that all the right parties took the appropriate risk allocation, including the government, and they were really, really supportive. Now, when COVID hit, it compounded the whole situation because, I mean, we all lived through it. We know what happened. I think it was like December, early Jan, at the peak of COVID. The first thing that was really difficult to work through was the credit markets, because we had priced the transaction, everyone, the ECA lenders and ourselves, based on the government of Indonesia risk. They were at a certain level of pricing, and then everything dislocated, all the pricing, everything became much more expensive. So again, we led that, we made sure that we stayed calm and that we held price. And we expected the markets to normalize, and they did after 3 months. So that was very, very important. And that meant that we could continue to go full steam ahead. Now, the other element of this, which was really quite amazing, is that it was actually a race to space, because SpaceX has launch windows, right? So the company had worked with them to figure out when it is that you could take the program and the satellite into space. So there was a 3-month window, I think starting November 2023. And so everything had to work towards that. All the contracts, very important element, were on a fixed time, fixed price basis, which meant everyone was on the hook to deliver their part of the bargain at a certain price at a certain time. So because of that, COVID really didn't affect us as much. People ask me, how many times did you go to Indonesia to do the DD on this? And the answer is 0. I didn't even go once. That's also because the main plant, the main machinery was going to get moved from France via plane, which I think Victor will talk about later, to Cape Canaveral and go up obviously into orbit. So the ground systems, you could monitor. It was something that was going to happen later. So all the negotiations stayed on track. because everyone was on the hook, which is very important, the launch window made sure that we were able to continue and work through COVID and essentially approve the facility in Feb 2021. And within 2 months, we hit financial close in April 2021, which was unbelievable. I think even for normal project finance transactions, those are like pretty amazing timelines. And there are many people here, I hope, who would agree with me. And we essentially entered into construction phase. And there are many, many stories about the construction phase that I'm going to ask Jackie to come up here and share with you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jackie Cui Jing. My colleague Victor and myself are from the Portfolio Monitoring Department of AIIB. We're going to take you through the remainder of the Satria journey from financial close to what we are today, when the Satria program is providing high-speed satellite services to more than 27,000 service points across the Indonesia archipelago. And this number continues to grow where we're talking here. While speaking of a well-structured project financing, someone used to say that it's not like a watch that is wound. What does it mean? Well, you kind of wind up your watch and let it run, and it should go on its own, and ultimately not dependent on the sponsor support. So that's why, as Asim explained, we spend a lot of time on due diligence, on identifying risk, allocating risk, and making sure that all the contracts can be enforced. However, even for a well-structured project like Satria, not everything will go as planned. So it's equally important to have dynamic monitoring activity, transparent information sharing, and good coordination among all the parties throughout the construction and implementation stage of this project. And the Satria project sets a very good example of these principles. So before talking about what we actually experienced during construction, I would like to take a first look at the Satria architecture from a technical point of view. Similar to some other geostationary satellite communication projects, there are 3 key components to the Satria program. The first is the space segment, which involves the construction of 150 Gbps satellite, high put-through satellite. Well, if you don't have an idea what does it mean, well, it's a satellite of a big bus size, and also it is the biggest satellite in Asia that was constructed at that time. The space segments also include some of the associated ground control center and management centers in 2 main gateways in the Java Islands. And second important element is the ground segments. The ground segments involve the construction of 11 gateway sites, which each gateway equipped with a 13-meter diameter antenna. All these antennas are pointing to the satellite in the space. And lastly is the launch segment that entails the procurement of a launch vehicle and launch satellite to its orbital space. The slides here give you a good overview of the Satria architecture. There are some parts in the right side of the slides that are highlighted in red. Those are the responsibility of the VSAT operators. Well, VSAT stands for Very Small Aperture Terminal. Well, in layman terms, it stands for the very small ground stations, earth stations, that connecting to the end user. And the responsibility of assigning these operators is beyond the government. So this is a part of the whole PPP structure. We always say that the Satria architecture is an ambitious architecture. Why? Well, because actually it involves certain of a new technology. The Satria project is produced in a relatively new platform of Thales, the main manufacturer. It's actually the 8th satellite that ever produced in that production line. So from the very beginning, the technical and delayed risk is there for us to monitor. So what we actually experience in construction is the delay caused by COVID-19. As you can see, that a satellite communication project of this size, the main constructor, Thales, relies on many plants and factories to manufacture and deliver the different subsystems, equipment, and components of the satellite. And these factories and plants are located in many places, including Belgium, France, Germany, United States, and Russia. Force majeure events caused by COVID-19 not only resulted in resource bottleneck, but also resulted in delay of manufacturing and delivery of some key components for the construction of the satellite. And the COVID impact went even beyond the delivery of equipments. Well, what is unique for a satellite communication project is it cannot happen without spectrum rights. The COVID-related delay means that the satellite would not be able to reach the destined orbital site before the expiry of the orbital rights originally assigned by ITU. ITU stands for International Telecommunication Union, which is a specialized union agency responsible for assigning spectrum rights on a first-come, first basis. So unlike the delivery of components that you can mitigate it through refining your production sequence or replacing your supplier, there's no alternative to spectrum rights. So the only option at that time left was either to request the ITU to extend the spectrum rights, which is a very, very lengthy process because the ITU only convenes every month, or to launch a smaller satellite to temporarily occupy the orbital slots at the cost of the sponsor, which we call a floater. However, it's turned to be that the second option wasn't successful because of the unavailability of launch vehicle at that time. The COVID-19 impact also related to ground segment construction. There are 11, as explained, there are 11 sites across Indonesia, and each site is equipped with 13-meter diameter antennas. So these antennas are manufactured by Chinese suppliers, and because of COVID lockdown, and also social distancing measures, these equipments are very much delayed, and they have to be deployed at 11 different sites. And also in terms, there are also some unique challenges on the construction of the ground segments. Because these sites needs to be carefully evaluated to allow the 80 tons of crane to move in to deploy the satellite. Also, these are not simply any pieces of lines. These are the lines that has to be geographically stable. It has to be near to the existing internet point of presence in order to mitigate the impacts of latency. It also needs all the permits and regulatory requirements to be satisfied, and also the weather condition also needs to be carefully monitored to avoid the impact of thunderstorm during the monsoon seasons. But against all these odds, the factory shut down, and there's also even a fire accident at the French plants. And also the COVID, the delivery, the vast spread of the geographic location of the sites. The satellite was substantially completed on time in a period of 2.5 years. So all the manufacturing and all the schedules are refined to catch up under pressure, to catch up the overall COD delivery schedule. The ITU eventually granted the spectral rights because they're so satisfied with the reporting and with the faster progress of the satellite towards the end. And also the land permits, it's obtained one by one, with the antennas eventually installed in every and each of the 11 gateway sites. So here, what contributed, I still also remember that during the 2.5-year construction period, the lenders, the sponsors, advisors, we had a weekly meeting to discuss all these issues, to find ways to mitigate the risk, and also as lender to make sure that the financings is also made available based on our assessment of the involvement of the risk. This project, we had altogether 24 disbursements during the construction stage, which, well, a little bit unusual for project financing. But every time we need to assess the involvement of the risk and make our funding available to the borrower. So what is behind this remarkable achievement? So here in the slides, I listed some of the enabling factors. However, I don't want to read through the slides because you can see from there, or some of the practitioners many years in this industry may know better than me how to make a project financing structure work. What I want to share is what I feel, my personal feeling for this project. You know, I visited the project sites, the main gateway sites in Java Island more than once. But every time, when I'm standing in front of the big antennas, I feel small. And I feel proud. I feel small, as you can see, I'm short, and these are huge antennas over there. But I feel very proud and amazed by the fact that how modern technology and ICT infrastructure can change human lives. As Asim also said, in the early ages, that some people only for the first time connected to the internet through a telephone line. This is also my case. So you see, in such a short period of time, how this modern technology can change people's life in such a good way. But this success is not because of one single institution or one person. It's a collective success of the private sector, of the public sector, of the lenders consortium, including the MDB lender, such as AIIB. And this success is driven by ambition, by commitment, and by determination. So sometimes, when I look up in the sky, I couldn't see the Satya satellite. However, I know for sure that 35,000 kilometers above the Earth, the Satya satellite is there, constantly talking to the ground segments and connecting millions of people. So I'll stop here, and my colleague Victor is going to tell you the story, how we eventually send the satellite to space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm going to go from the construction of the satellite to the launch and then to the operations. The project had to go through many issues or challenges. One of the main things was after construction, the satellite had to be transported to the launch site, meaning moving a big piece of equipment from France to the United States. The original plan was to do it by air. And the only possibility was to use the largest airplane on the planet, which was the Antonov. However, due to geopolitical tensions, that airport turned not to be available. So suddenly, the company had to find the only other solution, which was doing the transport through sea. Of course, this change generated logical challenges, and the good thing is, thanks to the different companies involved, they were able to succeed and make a very smooth transition, bringing the satellite to the site. Other impacts were the possibility that due to delays on the transport, that the slot specifically defined for this satellite could be lost. However, that did not happen, and it was defined that the launch was confirmed to occur on June 18, 2023. Other issues like failure to reach orbit or pass certain tests, I'm going to touch that later. But considering that the importance of the launch, I would like to go back to that point. We put together a clip, 3 minutes, that show the different phases of the whole launch. Actually, the original launch is around 1 hour, so we would like to share this.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition. And liftoff. Go Falcon, go PSF. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal. Vehicle is pitching downrange.
That incredible view means that Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from pad 40. And right now we are throttling down to prepare for max Q in about 30 seconds.
Vehicle is supersonic.
With that call out, we know that Falcon 9 is moving faster than the speed of sound.
Main engine cut off.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC startup.
The MVAC engine on our second stage has ignited. Now, this is the first of 2 second stage burns that we're tracking for this mission. And the first stage on the left-hand side of your screen is coming back to land on our drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
You can see that 3 of those engines have now relit engines 1, 5, and 9 for the entry burn. It's about 20 seconds for this burn.
Expected loss of signal, Cape Canaveral.
There's that view of landing burn.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
Now, we are expecting this burn to last just about a minute. Beautiful views from up in space there on your screen right now. And we're essentially using this to finalize the placement of stage 2 and the payload in our desired geostationary transfer orbit.
Position of signal Maldives.
Payload separation confirmed.
I would like to mention that I was fortunate to be the one going to the launch. That's probably one of the most unique experiences that I have had in my professional life. This is nothing, to be honest. We were I wanted to share with you, we were like 3 or 4 kilometers away from the launch. So actually, you just see the rocket like this big, but you can see it. And then when the engines start, you hear nothing, absolutely nothing. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and you're like, what's going on here? And suddenly, you just feel the shock wave. And then that's when you realize that the power of this type of rockets. And then the sound is really, really loud, and it continues for, I don't know, 20 minutes. It was a very interesting experience, so I just wanted to share that with you. I also wanted to mention that as you saw, the launch of the satellite went pretty well. No issues at all. However, the story doesn't stop there. Then the satellite has to reach its orbit. And as Asin mentioned before, could be an asteroid. It could be many things. Many things could fail. For example, the sonar panels may not open properly. And then the satellite will never reach its orbit, which means that you will have a piece of garbage just in the space and no project. As you can imagine, you cannot just simply send the mechanic to fix the problem. It's either it works or it doesn't work. So yeah, the satellite reaches orbit after 6 months. Luckily, everything went well. And after 2 more months of test, the satellite was declared operational. After that is when we were able to say, okay, the implementation of the project was successful. Before that, we couldn't. So from here, I would like to move to the operation part. Yeah. Okay, from the operation part, I think was simpler. After everything was working properly, the satellite was able to confirm that it could connect the whole country, providing high-speed internet service. As Jackie mentioned, Today, there are more than 27 service points that are operating right now after installing the VSATs. The VSATs are these small antennas like the one you can see on your screen. So these VSATs are being installed in schools, in hospitals, in local enforcement agencies, allowing the teachers, students, doctors, and other enforcement agencies to connect all around the country. All this was possible thanks to the dedication and the experience of the sponsors of the project company, and of course, they were the ones that had to overcome all the challenges that we just mentioned. From our side, what we did, as he mentioned, was to provide financing, and together with the rest of the lenders, we made sure that the financial plan was fully funded. So in short, the Satria satellite is indeed a great successful story that we should continue sharing. There are many more out there which the AIIB could support. So I'll stop there. Just wanted to show a number of some of the awards that the project had received. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. And I think this is such a powerful project, and one of the emblems of our digital enabled infrastructure that is such a new strategy to us here at AIIB. And given that we have likely a few more minutes for Q&A, what I would like to do is to invite the whole project team to the stage to take perhaps 1 or 2 questions. Can I kindly ask the project team to come to the stage? And then now we're open to questions. We have a question from our colleague Kishala in the center.
You do.
Yeah, we'll see, depending on the question.
Very profound, thank you. This is Kishla here from AIIB Abu Dhabi Hub. 2 quick questions. One very simple. What does Satria means? Satria means, is there any...
Why don't you ask easy questions?
means, sorry.
Okay, let's hear the second one.
And the second one is, and I was just chatting with Menglin, who was the one who drafted the concession agreement? And if we have to do this deal again, what enhancements in concessions, because it's a very perfect case for us to go to governments and say, this is a concession in place which is bankable. And if we have to sort of replicate this concession across, what sort of enhancements you suggest?
All right. So who's Jack? I mean, it's a short acronym for what it means in Bahasa in Indonesian. So I don't know. Do you know what the acronym stands for? Satria?
Well, it stands for the satellite of Indonesia.
Yeah. So it's in Bahasa. It's an acronym for satellite of Indonesia, blah, blah, something like that acronym. Mengling, do you remember the Bahasa word? It's in Bahasa. The second thing is really important, and again, so we were really, really keen on it, right? I mean, again, it's a lifetime transaction. I mean, till now, I'm so proud of it. I mean, can you imagine giving internet connectivity to 40 million people in like essentially in one go once it's up and running, right? That's very powerful. So I certainly don't think I'll ever be able to do something like that. So we got into the transaction, the operators, PSN, were very credible. But the thing we had to remember is that they were Indonesian. And they were very aggressive, just like we wanted to be part of it. They were very keen to do it. So when you go through a public procurement process for the concession agreement, the government wants to give you as little as possible, right? So for instance, the asteroid thing that I mentioned, right? The concession agreement didn't cover that. There were standard clauses and conditions for satellite financing, which were very obvious to the technical advisors and everyone else who'd been doing satellite financing, but they weren't to some of the other parties. And also the government didn't want to be on the hook for it. And because it was publicly bidded, you couldn't go and change it, because it would have meant that they'd have to go and rebid the whole thing. And everyone was on a clock, and everyone wanted to get that internet service to those 40 million people very, very quickly. But the lawyers played a very, very important role in this. And they allowed the revision in such a way that it didn't circumvent the public procurement processing laws. And the government's support, therefore, was very important. They accepted immediately that there were elements of the concession agreement that were short and that required revision, but not entire wholesale amendment. And we were able to tweak it and get the things that we needed to, such as if there's an asteroid and the satellite is partially degraded, because that was an eventuality you had to run a scenario for, as in not 150 Mbps, but 100. Who would take on the risk? The insurance would pay out partially, but they would take care of the others. Another really amazing thing was, we thought, like what Victor said, this piece of garbage. When we got into it, we didn't think it was garbage, because we're like, okay, if the government doesn't pay, we'll just use the ground system control and take it somewhere else, sell it, the capacity to someone else. But the satellite is built based on the curvature of the Earth at that 146 degrees east latitude. As soon as you move it, it degrades with respect to it still cannot deliver 150 Gbps. So when Mengling and I and another colleague of ours and 2 other colleagues of ours spent 18 months, it was amazing because we learned so much, but it was also a lot of hardcore negotiation. And then COVID made it very difficult because we couldn't get on a flight. Well, I would have difficulties anyway because being a Pakistani, but Mengling, I couldn't get him on a flight to Indonesia just to negotiate with the government because everything was online. But the commitment of the government of Indonesia was very important. And also, another important part of this was, when they launched it, they ascribed it as a national strategic project. President promulgation around 58/2018. So we knew about the level of commitment that the government was going to put to it. But hats off to them. They could have said, too bad, this is the agreement, PSN has signed up for it, take it or leave it. But they didn't. They were very fair and equitable, and all the lawyers who were satellite lawyers were able to impress on all the parties about what was fair and equitable, such that the risk allocation was appropriate. That's a really long-winded response, but so point is, concession agreements are standard with respect to certain elements, certain industries. So concession agreements in Indonesia for energy is standard. The enabling legislation was very comfortable for us, but concession agreement for satellite hadn't been done before. And that's why it's still, I think, unique, because I don't think another PPP satellite financing has been done. I may be wrong, but I'm quite certain of it. Until today, by the way, this is still our only private sector deal in Indonesia, which of course we want to change every day, but it's still the case.
I would like to add something. I think it's difficult to make a comparison because this is the only satellite that we have done. But based on my experience, so far the project is doing pretty well. So I think that the risk allocation, the risk mitigation, not only at the level of the financial structure, but also as part of the concession agreement, it seems to me that the authority knew very well what they were doing, which I think that's key. There are parties, because this is such an important and technological project, having the right parties, experienced parties, is absolutely key. As we mentioned, there were a number of challenges. It was not free of challenge. There were a number of challenges, and the project company stood and deal with all those issues. If you don't have the right parties, it would be very easy to have a different story.
So I do want to highlight one thing. I think, Victor kind of alluded to it, but you have no idea, like, what a big surprise it was, right? Because, launch failure, asteroids, even COVID we went through. So we're like, okay, now everything in the world that could possibly happen, we have overcome already through construction. But then Ukraine, Russia happens. And the Anatol, there's not one, there are 8 of them, and they were all in Ukraine. They were entirely grounded. There was no one who could get to them. And so it wasn't only a challenge for us, it became a challenge for the entire satellite industry all over the world. But again, that point of fixed time, fixed price was very important, because that meant Thales was on the hook, and they had to come out of the way to make sure that they got the satellite across the Atlantic. However, they had to make sure that we hit the launch window. And not only for us, but for the entire assembly of satellites that they were meant to deliver even before us. So that helped us. There were others that had to be done, but it was beyond anyone's imagination that Russia-Ukraine was going to happen, and the Anatol or Amatov or whatever it's called, which is this monster plane, specialized to carry the satellites. All 8 of them were going to be grounded in Ukraine. I mean, what is the eventuality of that? I mean, no one in risk management, no one ever thought that that was going to happen. Sorry, I think I just needed to really stress that point.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take the 2 questions together in the interest of time, please.
Yeah. This is indeed a stellar project among AIIB's hundreds of projects. So bravos. My question is from the user side. So as you know, the satellite internet is generally more expensive compared with the land-based broadband, right? But for remote users, it might be the only option, right?
Yes.
So could you elaborate a little bit on the affordability of the user fee?
Right. So yeah. So again, I didn't go into the depth we on a time, but that's why the PPP structure worked, right? Yeah. This was an availability-based contract. The project company was meant to deliver 150 Mbps of capacity to the government. After that, it was the government's choice about how they made sure that this signal was sent to all the islands, and they were basically paying for the availability of that on behalf of all these sort of underserved consumers, right? Because the schools and the hospitals and all, they couldn't pay market price for the satellite. It was the government which had a socio and economic objective of making sure that they brought these people into the internet world, and therefore they were paying on behalf of these 40 million people. The reason it's more economical is because you can't lay fiber across 17,000 islands. So the cheapest way of getting a signal to those remote islands was from the space. Simple. And over the course of this project, slowly fiber will come to some islands, and that fiber will eventually start replacing the signal as well. But currently, because it's an archipelago, Indonesia is home to probably one of the most vibrant satellite industries in the world, because it's the best way to get signals to these islands. And there is going to be a SATCHAR too. We're waiting for it. Let's see.
Sorry, I forgot to identify myself. I'm Bingu, a professor from Beijing Foreign Studies University. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
We're going to take one last question in the interest of time.
Yeah, mine is less of a question and more a comment that I wanted to share. So to an already fantastic project and the value add that AIIB did, one point that I wanted to kind of highlight was, it was still relatively early in AIIB's journey. $150 million financing for a single project from a risk point of view was quite challenging. So the real comfort level that we had was for a $75 million 15-year loan. And so the challenge was, how do we solve for the balance 75? And I think, as Asim alluded to get 15-year commercial bank financing for Indonesia was a tall order. There was no capacity at all in the commercial bank market. Whatever capacity was there, we utilized through the Export Credit Agency facility. So we had to, again, innovate to come up with an additional 75 million risk appetite from the market. So we had to come up with a new product, a new solution that we call a risk transfer. And it was the first instance where AIIB successfully mobilized risk capital from the insurance sector to help us deliver this 150 million. So all of that is happening silently behind the back, and that contributed also to our ability to successfully deliver this 150 million 15-year financing. And now that's kind of a big part of AIIB's private capital mobilization tool. So it all happened on the back of this project as well.
Thank you. And thank you to all the presenters. Let's give them a big round of applause again.
Thank you.